Hi, you're listening to I'd rather be writing.com. My name is Tom Johnson. Today I am chatting with Bobby Kennedy, who is the author of the course Become a Technical Writer. He's got a lot of offerings there, and we're going to be chatting about how technical writers can, or how people can get into technical writing, what kind of things he offers, and some challenges, some tips, and other kind of info about that whole journey. So, Bobby, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us where you're from, or where you're based, and tell us a little bit about these courses.
Sure thing, Tom. Thank you for the introduction and the invite as well. So I am based in New York State, in the beautiful Hudson Valley, about 2 hours north of New York City, previously from Brooklyn. And actually, about the time I moved from Brooklyn in 2019, I was finishing up a long contract with a fantastic company. And the contract was due to end after a number of extensions in February of 2020. So I would say for a number of months in 2019, I was thinking about, I really need to offer a course. It kept coming back to me. I need to really offer a course because I'm closing 20 years of technical writing. And I have an unusual background in that I've been mostly a contract writer and in New York City. And I've worked in a number of different fields to include banking, media, et cetera. And I just thought I had something to offer, especially since the beginnings of my career were so awful. I didn't start in 2000, as a matter of fact, even though it says that on my resume. I started in 1999, and it was such a disaster that I didn't even put it on my resume. I had one of these super duper developers who wore a cape in the office asked me to he gave me a RoboHelp disk on a Friday afternoon and said, "We're going to start with this on Monday." Of course, the rest was a disaster. And I learned a lot from that. And I continued to stumble and bumble around. And I thought, it doesn't have to be this way, right? Back then, of course, we didn't have the LinkedIn we have now. We didn't have the courseware, the extent of the courses we have. And but I had that experience, that very painful, embarrassing experience. And about this time, again, it's like synchronicity, right? A former employer of mine reached out and said, "Hey, Bobby, you're a great writer. Can you teach my daughter technical writing?" And she was a student in the university at the time. She was, I believe, a sophomore majoring IT, and she really liked technical writing. So I thought, aha. I put together an 8-week course, and that was the skeleton of what I'm offering now. It was just a perfect confluence, no pun intended, of events. And ironically, the company I was finishing up with in February of 2020 came back in a few months and kind of badgered me to come on board as a technical writing manager. So I said, wait a minute. I actually left and started something new. And they said, well, you can keep that. So that's where I am now in 2022. I'm doing this nights and weekends, and while I work for this multinational company as a technical writing manager during the day. And my plan is to, I'm not in the tens of thousands of members yet, but my plan is to develop it so that it's, much more extensive, and I grow the courses so that I can get rid of my day job, as the saying goes.
Yeah, well,
if you know what I mean.
That's cool. That's cool. So your first kind of inklings of when you started this course were when a friend asked you to kind of teach their young student technical writing. When was this?
This was back in the fall of 2019.
Okay.
And again, I moved in the end of July, and if you understand how an idea can germinate for weeks or months, and you're like, okay, I got to do something. It just happened. It was perfect timing. And the fellow, I had an extremely good rapport with the guy, so I had no doubt that his daughter would be a good student. She was wonderful. And since then she's graduated. I don't know if she's working in technical writing, but no matter what she's doing, I'm confident she'll be successful. So
that's cool. That's cool. I was that sort of resonated with me because I started teaching some API doc courses at the request of people who would ask me. Like, it wasn't something I naturally wanted to do. It was like somebody reached out and they're like,
Yes.
hey, can you teach this? I'm like, well, I could put together some stuff. And so I see how things sort of germinate and grow from there. So that's cool.
Yes.
Now you started out with like one main course, but now you've got three. I see like a basic, intermediate, advanced. You've got a UX writing. So how many courses do you actually offer now?
Great question, Tom. Great question. So I'm actually not accepting students today at the moment because I'm restructuring my course offerings. So I originally had the big course, right? The all-inclusive, comprehensive technical writing course. I called it Jump School. That's another story. If we have time, we'll get into that. But I saw the need to break this course up into three offerings based on the three distinct levels within the course. And there's a couple of reasons I did that. One is that it gave people more flexibility. So the course, roughly speaking, the first course is a basic. It's a thorough introduction to technical writing, the mindset, technical writing and editing, and also how to write procedures. For example, I've recently added how to work with SMEs, which is very important, as you know, and I'm adding a couple more as we speak. Then my second phase is focus on document production. It's actually doing the work. So we work on produce three documents for a portfolio. And the third phase is focus on marketing and interviewing. I don't know any other online course that does this. So we for example have a mock interview for that third phase, and to get a certificate you have to do it, and you have to do the documents to get a certificate. You have to do the exercises in the first phase to get a certificate. So I'm also finding the price. The course became almost $800, and a lot of people don't want. They can't afford it, especially in other currencies, right? If you're working in another economy, it's a tough nut. So I thought that if I broke it up, I could offer them as a bundle or as individual units and give people just a greater selection of choices. I've had an engineer, for example, who was a terrible writer who didn't want to become a tech writer, but she needed the basics. So, for example, phase one would be perfect for her. Just to give you an example, I also have just started UX writing. I have an interesting background with that. I was not a UX writer for the majority of my career. Obviously, that's more a recent development anyway. But the last 3 years, I've been doing it intensely. So I've partnered with a company to offer a really good UX course. And so I'm really looking forward to that. March is going to be a big deal. And the doors are closed to get ready for March.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. You mentioned, coming back to the description here, you mentioned that you have students produce several documents as part of the requirements of the course. I found this has always been the most challenging aspect. How do you find projects for them? Are these like real projects? Are these imagined scenarios for docs? Like, tell me more about the documents they produce.
Well, that's a great question, Tom. I'm really happy you asked that. You're right. It really is hard to find real scenarios, and I'm continuing to look. As a matter of fact, I'm in discussion with a company for to work on knowledge articles, for example, and to rotate these with a number of different app developers every month. That would be ideal, because there's nothing like the real thing, right? So, in the moment, what I have is an interesting exercise. It's actually produced in Canva, where I have a state document, a formal state declaration on COVID. It's a mask requirement. And I have that translate that English, which needless to say is fairly Baroque, into plain English, which again, it requires a lot of work. And then they place it in a COVID poster for a place like Walmart, for a sign. So it sounds very simple, but it's actually very difficult. So they learn intense editing, they learn image placement, they learn layout, all in one. And we use Canva for that, of course, which is free. The other intense one is a Salesforce user guide, believe it or not. So Salesforce has a free developers edition. I don't know if you knew that, but it's a fully functional developers version There's nothing held back. I wouldn't put my data in there for long because they probably flush it every 60 days or whatever. But for learning purposes, it's wonderful. So people can go in and the next thing that's wonderful is that Salesforce does not use many screen captures in their help guides. So that it's really hard. If you get an assignment, you can't Google the user guide that exists because it doesn't exist, right? So I get people used to the whole from the template to using Snagit to placement of graphics to how they've already learned how to write procedures, and they get all this this full experience, and the document comes out to anywhere from, depending on what they choose, anywhere from 14 to 20 pages, and it looks great. I mean, but previously they couldn't do anything like that. Now they can do it, and it's a confidence builder. It looks great on a portfolio, and yeah, it's fake. It's XYZ company, or I name it whatever they want to put to it. So it's fake, but it's not really, because they do the work. So
those sound great. I mean, I'm thinking of times where I was interviewing technical writers and we'd give them like some really poor documentation and tell them to fix it, which kind of sounds like your COVID example, right? It's like fix it. And it's pretty eye-opening about how people can do that. I mean, it's not a lengthy sort of task, at least in these interviews. We'd give them like one page of docs. And yeah, the ability to structure information, to identify areas that need clarity, and to figure out techniques for doing that is something that is at the core of what we do, simplifying complex information, but it is very challenging. So that's great. And I also, let's see, you also mentioned that you have some interviewing techniques. So it's not just like a solitary writing endeavor. You actually have them interview people. How does that work?
So it's a great question. Have you done mock interviews before? Have you practiced?
No.
Okay. So when I was in college, we do mock interviews. As a matter of fact, after I graduated, they would continue to do that. And I'm sure you're aware that there are questions unique to technical writing that you have to ask, or you should ask in an interview, right? One of the ones I find really fascinating is, what's your process? So if you get that, and the first time I heard that years ago, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what do you mean? And then I heard it again, and I heard it again. And sure enough, I polished that up. So that's one of my questions. So as part of my marketing module, my marketing and then interviewing, I list the questions, the most common questions. And then I have a what they call JD, or job description. I have one that actually is live. I just changed the people's names to protect their privacy, and I customized it for our course. I said, well, we use these tools, and I added something like FrameMaker. It's just to not make it simple. So based on the job description and the questions that are frequently asked, I hold these mock interviews, and I'll go first, and then the person I interviews the next person. And I've been really impressed by how much fun people have had, and not knowing whether they're going to get stomped on or embarrassed or whatever. It's difficult. It's really difficult when you're not used to it. Fortunately, I've probably done about 70 interviews in my career, and just because I was interviewing almost every year, multiple times, and I really do think it's a huge confidence builder, and it's really important if you expect to get people like job ready, as my website says. I think it's really important. It's one of those, look, when you have a business, you're trying to look for differentiators, right? And I think it's one of those things that really differentiates my course, is, to use a cliche, high touch, much more high touch than, say, a Udemy course, where, look, you can't really blame them when they're getting paid $20 a member or whatever. So anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that is good. That is good. Yeah. And I think that, mastering that interview is pretty key. So you're helping them prepare a portfolio of writing samples that have been kind of, you've helped them produce high quality stuff, right? And then the interview gets them ready for that, to be able to sell themselves in the actual interactions with the hiring team. What else goes into kind of this preparation? You mentioned quite a few things. Like, how about the advanced course? Is there anything there that you haven't touched on that you think you want to bring up?
Well, that I see. I think I think the advanced course. So I have to decide on my nomenclature, right? Because right now I have phase one, phase two, and phase three.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of like phase one is introduction, basic. Phase two is the intermediate. Phase three is advanced. And I'm still right now is phase two is the intermediate course is actually the documentation. Some would say that's a lot more challenging than the advanced course, which is marketing and interviewing.
Okay.
So, I might switch that up, but so that's not, I'm still trying to nail that down. So that'll be open next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you said you also use kind of some video critiques in the class, like as you're going through them, you mentioned that this is a high touch, kind of lots of interaction course.
Yes.
Explain a little bit about the video format you use as you're kind of giving feedback or doing other exercises.
Right on. So I remember about a week ago, I woke up and a fellow, I think he was from a different time zone, had emailed me, and I looked at I pulled it up, and it was like 0 or minus the degrees in my in my backyard, and I think I had my robe on, and I gave him a video, and it was funny. I mean, but all you could see was my head. He didn't know I had a robe on, but I did have a hat on. But what I do is I use an app called Cloud App, and it's just very it's very good at just clicking and running with a video. Where I'm in the bubble in the bottom corner of the screen, and I can illustrate. I can personalize the experience of critique, and if you remember, I don't know if you remember, but I sure remember when I got a Word document back and someone put tracking on it. Like, say, when I was a junior writer and someone was a senior writer, and it just looked like a murder scene, right? It just looked awful. You open up and you're like, WTF? So I don't want people running. I don't want people running when they see that. So this is a nice way, especially the first time, to soften the opening shock. And also, I can't do, especially when they're starting, I can't like correct everything, because they wouldn't even be able to make out what's legit, right? What they did correct. So this is like, hey, you start out, what do they do right? So it's really, really important to be positive and to give people encouragement, because it's hard, man. It's hard work, and especially when you're starting, it's really hard. So I found it. I've been doing it for weeks now, not even months. But I found like people have responded very strongly to it, and I'd like to continue, because look, it's quick and easy. I can still do the edits, but it really softens the blow. And it's like, again, I'm not nearly, I'm sure, as video savvy or video editing savvy as you are. I'm really new to this, but this app really makes it easy. Again, it's called Cloud App. I just click, make the video run. I see when they open it, they give me a little bit of analytics, and it's just wonderful that way. Just wonderful.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I often give like feedback on my students' essays. I've got a couple high school students who are writing essays, and yeah, there's a different experience between just adding comments and then kind of talking through them. Just a few days ago, I added a ton of comments, or not a ton, a lot of comments to one of my daughter's essays, and she thought, oh, that's good, but it was obvious she didn't really get them. So I sat beside her and explained and talked through them, and I could see the understanding start to kick in. So I imagine, like with a video, you've got that same kind of personal context where you can really talk through a lot of the comments. And I think that's invaluable. So,
and the thing is, I'm not fibbing. Like I'm not fibbing when I say this is a really good first stab. I'm not fibbing. I'm not BSing someone when I say, look, this is a great start, because they haven't done this before. Right.
Yeah.
So, ultimately, I want to get into using Flare, et cetera. But I just in a course that's supposed to last a few weeks, learning Flare would eat that up. Right. So that's why I use Word. And again, I know a lot of tech writers are kind of, might be astonished that my members use Word, but it's great for just building their skills without being buried in a new tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think if you used like Flare or some other help authoring tool, it would derail everything into a technical tool thing, rather than like a learning how to write and approach content.
Rabbit holes, as we say, too many rabbit holes.
You also mentioned another aspect of these courses, talking about emotional encouragement and keeping their spirits up by hitting on the positive. You mentioned that you have these cohorts that you group them in.
Yes.
Tell me about that. I mean, it's not just an individual endeavor. They actually have like a little group that goes through the course.
Yes. Yes. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. I had a I originally began with cohorts using Slack. I was leveraging Slack for the messaging and file transfer and organization, and it worked really well. A lot of people don't like Slack, I think, because I think they don't know how to modulate, like tune it down or tune it out a little bit more. So, but it went really well for the first couple of classes, and I noticed that once I switched my model to entirely self-paced, so that they're not in a cohort, like the participation just went whoop. So I went from 70 to 80% completion rate to just the opposite, to like 70% not completing or just getting stuck and not reaching out, or so I think I think psychologically it's a really big deal to have a cohort. And I found that because I offer a lot, because it's high touch, I found the optimal size to be about 10 or 12. Like if I get beyond that, I'm probably losing too much sleep right now. So ultimately what I want to do is, let's say first draft, I want them to correct each other's first draft, right? And I'm thinking of ways to do that so it's like depersonalized a little bit, so it doesn't get how people are with it's a very sensitive topic when you're submitting they're submitting their first document, and I'm thinking maybe they give their favorite animal name and a favorite number and save the file like that, so it's anonymous, something creative like that, so it depersonalizes it, and yet they can get the satisfaction of someone looking at the material. And as you know, look, critiquing is an art form. It really is. So that would also get them involved in that, and also help me scale this course. Ultimately, I want to scale it. I want to get them more involved and add another instructor or two, right? So, I hope I answer your question about cohorts. I actually had a cousin of mine who's very big into online. She said, "Open it up! You got to open it up. Let them do self-paced." It just didn't happen. I didn't see the numbers that she anticipated, and I was really discouraged to see people disappear or just stall. And I'm thinking, part of it has to do with COVID, that it's just a crazy time, and people are so burnt out. And but I think in a cohort, it's like, oh, so and so's missing. Oh, maybe reach out to them or whatever. And with Slack, it takes seconds. So you have that thread. I don't know if this resonates with you at all.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I was actually just thinking of at my current work, I'm in a cohort of other tech leads, and we're kind of chatting about things. There's this ability to share with other tech leads about challenges and to get feedback from peers rather than just like a solitary module that somebody goes through that's very impersonal, right? And
yes.
So I mean, there's huge benefits to that, and at my schools, the kids are organized in cohorts as well, obviously, because as well as college, people have cohorts. It's very common pattern for a reason. So that's cool to see.
Have you used Focusmate.com? Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. My tip today is Focusmate.com is basically video conferencing with a stranger around the world. And it's just that. It's a one-on-one video session to hold each other. It's an accountability exercise. And it really works. I pay $5 a month. I can do unlimited sessions. And when I feel too isolated, I'm out here in the country next to the dairy farms and the horse farms. I just get on Focusmate and boom, I get my focus back. It really does work. And I'll be, I'll be in somebody from Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever. It's fascinating. Huh. And it's I would really encourage you to check it out, because it might help your students. It might help colleagues, especially if you work remotely, especially most of us are nowadays, right? I've been fortunate to do it for a long time, to work remotely, but it just takes the edge off of isolation at times.
Wow, that's interesting. I'll check that out. I really hadn't heard of the Focusmate thing. Yeah. Well, we've chatted about a few different things. I know there's a lot of different topics we could get into. Is there any Can you tell people a little bit about how they would go to find out more, like the website, the sign up process, other kind of like duration, like when's your next course and so on?
Yes, yes. So Tom, I've got two courses launching in March, and I just for me, this is not not my only gig. So I have actually the luxury of making it right before I announce the date, right? So I just want to get things right and polished before I release it. And On my site, there's a pre-registration form. So if you go on my site, become technicalwriter.com, just drop the A. Become technicalwriter.com. It'll have a pre-registration button on just about every page, and it's a simple form. I think it's 4 or 5 questions. What interests you in technical writing, and they can sign up there and get on my mailing list, and they'll be first to know. So it's really interesting to see who's interested, like where they are in their career path. So some people are career changers, some are career pivoters. Like let's say they're a marketing writer, right? Some of them are former devs. I have one fellow recently, a gaming whiz, who longs to become a technical writer. Really, really bright guy. And so it's just fascinating to see what backgrounds they're from. And I think, I know that your articles, I've read a number of your articles, point to, what makes a good technical writer, or what might tell you whether that you're qualified. And I think the basics are, hey, you got to have strong writing skills, and you should really enjoy technology or be interested in learning more. So that's it. That's what it comes down to. I think you have 7 or 8 in your one article.
Oh, well, I get people reaching out to me every week with beginner type questions along just the same lines of what you described. Would I be a good fit for this? I'm a former something or another, former engineer, former librarian, former academic, former whatever. And, people are completely kind of lost. They need somebody to guide them. And I'm way too busy. Like I usually just point people to other resources, and I'll definitely point them your way, because I think there's a strong need for introductory and getting started courses on how to break into this field. It always sort of baffles me how kind of mysterious technical writing is. People just don't really understand what it is, how you get in it. They've heard it's lucrative, but is it interesting?
There's a lot of misinformation too. and I don't know if you found this in your career, but I've found, because I've worked at so many different companies, that there's a lot of accidental tech writers. Like they didn't mean to get in there, right? But they weren't working in products or marketing, and they were asked to do it. Like, hey, can you become? And that to me suggests, the real need for trained technical writers, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I call them accidental technical writers.
Yeah,
but I've met a lot of them.
I like that term. All right. Yeah. So just to repeat, if you go to becometechnicalwriter.com, click the pre-register now, you'll get on Bobby's mailing list, and he'll let you know when the next course is in March. He's going to be adding multiple different options. So I'm looking forward to seeing all these different types of courses. Any last words or comments you want to provide to people?
No, I really enjoyed this, Tom. I take this kind of commitment seriously, and to me, the biggest charge I get is seeing someone go from having really strong skills or talents, and yet insecurities like we all have, and then landing a job. And I've seen it time and again, and I've helped do that. I've helped them, go through climb the entire ladder. And to me, it's the greatest charge, is that get an email back, I got the job. And I see that time and again. And that's really the purpose of my course, the introductory course. And it's just the greatest charge. So, I know that they can't do it with the XYZ courses out there, with there are good courses out there. They're probably great value for the money, but they're most likely not going to help you get a job. That's what makes my course different.
Yeah, I love that emphasis on getting the job. It's a great time to be looking for a job as well. There's a lot of opportunities, but that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of candidates as well. So, all right. Well, thanks again, Bobby. I appreciate you coming on to
Thank you,
this
Tom.
podcast.
It
All
was a
right.
lot of fun.
Thanks.
Bye now.